essentially what happened was after that day, I got blown up. I got blown into a wall. I went through literal hell on earth during that deployment. And when I came back to base that day, I had some marks and some things that had happened to me. I got burnt, like I said, from that Valen battery and all that stuff, and showed up back to base. And when I walked back into base that day, the colonel and the chaplain, who was a full bird in the Navy, they called them a captain in the Navy, they were waiting for me. And they had already kind of heard over the radio the things that I had done. One of the people, I believe it was that sergeant that was yelling at people to get up and move, he had reported back to command, essentially saying that I had gone mad. Not mad in a bad way. That's just how the Brits say it. They said, I was just going crazy. I was working hard, and some of the things that I had done had gotten back to them. And first things first, the colonel walks up to me and he says, "Hey son, I heard what you did out there, and there's going to be some accommodations coming down for you. So I want you to be on the lookout for that." And then the next thing he said to me was, "But I need to let you know firsthand that your buddy Justice didn't make it." And I looked at him and I said, "Yeah, I had a feeling that was going to happen." And I said, "In all honesty, I'm kind of glad." And he said, "I understand." And what they did essentially was they brought me into the medical tent where Justice's body was still there, and they let me kind of spend a little bit of time to process and kind of hang out and get checked over and looked over. I still probably had about 3 or 4 months in the deployment left, and I got a phone call essentially asking, from my team leader saying, "Hey, do you want us to pull you back? We heard what you did too. The colonel had asked for you to receive a pretty prestigious award." That's all that was said to me. And I got a phone call from another buddy from a different area, and he's like, "Hey, man, I heard what you did. Word has it that you're going to be written up for a Bronze Star, Silver Star. What you did was nothing short of heroic. Know that." So that kind of lit another fire under my ass, to be honest with you, because what was going through my mind at that point in time was my legacy. As crazy as that sounds, like my legacy as a warrior. And I kind of looked at that award too as a little bit of a Band-Aid, right? To kind of like give credence to what I had gone through that day and what I had done. And in all honesty too, it's one of those situations that it's a once in a lifetime type of thing that you can either arrive to or fail from. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not something that's going to happen every day. There's probably no other situation in life that's going to occur where that's going to happen, unless of course I deploy more and do other things. But even then, you never know how the tides are going to turn. So I routed out the rest of the deployment, essentially in the deadliest place in Afghanistan at the time. Like I said last time, we had the top 10 HVIs. I had a golden goose egg dropped on my lap. I ended up receiving a source from one of the British guys who was the number 3 HVI in all of Sangin. And he'd been running this source, I had a source that had direct connection to the top 3 HVI. His code name was Gulab. And I was running this source essentially to get to him. Number 3 HVI. He was 27 years old. He was a strong up-and-comer. He had essentially the vote of the populace, if that makes sense, right? People loved him. The Afghan people loved him because he was a strong warrior at 27 years old. He was in charge of a full company of men, and he was running pretty much the district that I was in. So it was me against him essentially in this area. Me 26, 27 years old, him 27 years old. We're both in very prestigious roles, and we're both chasing after one another in a way. So I pretty much wrapped up my tour chasing this guy down. Probably about 2 months before I was about to leave, my source contacted me and said, "Hey, I'm with him and I can give you direct PID," which is a positive identification. So we use some of our tools and our assets to lock onto my source and get a PID. He legitimately gave me all the signals I taught him through Tradecraft to ID him and show us on live feed, essentially, "Hey, here's this guy." So we started following him live feed, and I called in the battalion commander at the time into the COC, and I said, sir, we have these reports, and this is on live screen, and this has been validated through multiple source reporting and so on and so forth. So he was given the option to go ahead. And what I mean by go ahead is to go ahead and take him out. From there, they committed to try to take him out, and it was 3 failed attempts. And I'm not going to go too deep into it because I don't know what I can exactly say. But due to the stalling and the hoopla, like the bureaucracy of everything that was going on, I'm not going to go too much in the red tape of it. But essentially, that lieutenant colonel had kind of whiffed on this whole thing because he was sitting there stalled and making decisions, and we kind of lost our window, and then we tried to scramble to make it back because he was going through kind of the red tape of bureaucracy, if that makes sense. He had to call him the JAG. We had to sit there, and we couldn't drop a bomb at certain locations and blah, 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 blah. So we missed. And I was livid. I was livid. And essentially that started to set the tone. The reason why I tell this is because it starts to set the tone for my departure from the military. Now, fast forwarding a couple months, and I'm getting ready to leave, and I find out word that my lieutenant has yet to write up the report for my award. And it leads to a confrontation between him, my chief on my team, and I. And essentially my chief stands up and says, sir, what are you doing? Why haven't you written this award up? And he's, you could tell he's like backstepping, and he's saying, oh, I was just waiting for the deployment to end so I could get all the total stats, and I'll just end up writing them up for one award for the entire deployment. And we kind of got the sense that this dude's stalling. He doesn't want to write this award up for me. And at the end of the day, it comes down to the fact that you need witness statements. Once you start writing a higher level award, you have to get witness statements. So anything above a Navy Achievement Medal, you have to get witness statements. And what he was doing was he was dragging his feet so that he didn't have to get the witness statements. And then in the end, he could just say, oh, oops, I didn't get witness statements. We're just going to put you in for a NAM. So we get back to the States, and the award's not written. My chief gets on his ass again and is like, sir, what the heck are you doing? Like, that's messed up kind of deal. They end up writing me up for the lowest award you possibly can receive. And then they try to get me in trouble. Now, this is partially due to my fault. I did end up going home on leave about 3 weeks after I got back from Afghanistan. I went home to Connecticut, got welcomed at a local bar, and people were just buying me shots and drinks all night long. Probably the worst thing that could have happened, to be honest with you, because I'm back home in this place that has that very negative energy, and then I'm drinking alcohol, which has that very negative energy, so the dark side started to come out. My friend ended up getting into an altercation. Cops got called. It was very stupid. It was like, so he reached over a fence and he grabbed the hot dog bun off of a hot dog vendor. He grabbed the hot dog bun and started eating it, and then the hot dog vendor got pissed off, essentially. And, drunken shenanigans like people do. And now looking back, how childish it is. So the cops got called on that. Here I am. I'm trying to talk to the cops. I'm like, hey, guys, don't arrest him. I got to go back home with this dude. I'm home on leave. I just came back from Afghanistan, blah, blah, blah. And then the cop tries to punk me. He's like, oh, kind of fuck you kind of deal. Get the fuck out of here. And I'm all like, hey, dude, same team, bro. Thinking that cops and military are kind of in this brotherhood, and come to find out we're not. So now I'm dealing with this guy. Push comes to shove. I end up getting arrested for breach of peace because he and I started arguing on the street, and they wanted to obviously take me in and get their thrills off of that. So I get a breach of peace charge while I'm on leave. They notify that exact cop, notifies the reserve detachment, that notifies my command. And then they're all like, well, you were doing things that were unbecoming of the United States Marine Corps. So
for disturbing the peace.
Yeah, which ended up getting dropped from court anyway. So they're like, hey, just do 40 hours of community service, report back to us, everything's going to get dropped. But that's how the military operates, is that kind of pettiness. There's a lot of pettiness in the military today. There's a lot of people that are in the military not to be warriors and not to be part of a brotherhood. They're instead there for their own careers and to progress things, so that, especially our officer corps. The officer corps is very much conditioned, from college into OCS and then throughout, that they're the true leaders of the military, and that they're managers essentially that can get and go and move over into the corporate world. They're like the perfect.
Sounds like a corporate structure.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. This is essentially what did happen during the Obama era, but it was definitely occurring before that. But it became more prominent during the Obama era, where all of these generals that were actual military leaders got booted out, and they promoted the ones that were going to be loyal to the corporate machine, so to speak.
Yeah.
So this is 2010 now, mind you, and all this other stuff, and we have a new fleet of officers coming in with this new idea and these new ideals, and that's essentially what was going on. Now, come to find out, essentially what was being said behind my back was, we can't give this guy a Bronze Star or a Silver Star, number one, because that's an officer award and not a lowly enlisted man's award.
Ooh.
If we give him a Bronze Star, he's taking a Bronze Star allocation away from a major or a captain that could be able to get promoted off of this award. And then the last thing that was stated behind my back was, oh, if we give him this award too, we're never going to be able to control him, because apparently I now had the designator of like a cowboy or a rebel or something like that in my own unit, which was stupid, right? Because essentially, I have the Spade tattooed on my hand, and I got this tattooed on me about 6 months before I got out, kind of as like a fuck you to the military. Same with the Che Guevara tattoo, but there's another reason behind the Che Guevara tattoo. But the Spade to me always represented a maverick. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie growing up. You ever see that movie?
Hell yeah, I've seen that. These are
one of my favorite movies ever, right? Ace of Spades, like that thing.
Yeah.
Always. I used to watch that movie as a kid, and that symbol has just stuck with me, and I've kind of always followed it. And what it means to me is that maverick mentality, right? Of like that Renaissance man, of that person who, it's not that I follow my own moral compass, but in a way I do. So I'll fit within the lines, but I'll also dabble outside the lines as well when I need to. Absolutely. And that's essentially what a counterintelligence operative is supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be operating in the shades of gray. That's why we're called the gray men, right? Like, that's why I moved over to this MOS, because that's my personality and that's where my IQ and all that other stuff is at, is that I don't fit within the nice tidy lines of these left and right lateral limits. I operate in shades of gray as well. So now I know that I'm getting fucked by my brothers. Essentially, I'm getting fucked by my leadership, and they're trying to burn me. So that put a real stink on everything as far as what my ideals were of belonging to this group. And in that time too, it kind of sat with me where I was like, I'm not going back to war. I'm not going to go back to war for these people, because I realize right now that no matter what I do, I'm going to be targeted. I'm not going to be taken care of. And why would I risk myself for that? So that's where that mindset started to kind of creep in of like, okay, I need to start getting away, right? I need to do that. So I ended up actually getting NJP'd. So that's called non-judicial punishment. I got NJP'd for that breach of peace charge, which was absolutely stupid. I took the lickings. I didn't fight it, because at that point in time, I was just like, if you guys are really going to do this, I was brought up on the ideals of the Marine Corps, of the John Basilones and the Dan Dailies and so on and so forth. Yeah. Men were awarded right away for their actions in combat, and then were heralded as heroes to their units and so forth. And that's what those citations were for. It was an embodiment of, hey, you guys need to live up to this, and you will be celebrated for that behavior. Instead, now I'm getting backstabbed, and I'm getting politically taken out in the backside by these men that are jealous because they don't have the gall to put themselves on the front lines. They'd rather rule by the pen than rule by the sword, which is complete fucking pencil neck shit.
Let me stop you right there to point something out.